no smoke with me. Then turn this smoke up 800 degree. Whole team eat chefs cause she's a treat. Ooh, she's so bougie, bon appetit. I'm a savage, attitude nasty. Talk big, but my bank account match it. Hood, but I'm classy. Rich, but I'm ratchet. Haters kept my name in their mouth, now they gagging. Bougie. He say the way that thing move, it's a movie. I told that boy we gotta keep it lowly, me the room key. I done bled the block and now it's hot, tunchi. I'm mood and I'm moody. I'm a savage. Classy, bougie, ratchet. Sassy, moody, nasty. Acting stupid, what's happening? What's happening? I'm a savage. Classy, bougie, ratchet. Sassy, moody, nasty. Hacking, stupid, what's happening? What's happening? Hips tick tock when I dance. On that demon time, she might start her OnlyFans. Big B and that B stand for bands. If you wanna see some real, here's your chance. I say left cheek, right cheek, drop it low and swing. Texas up in this thing, put you up on this gang. I be parking my frame, gang, 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 gang. If you don't jump, put jeans on, baby, you don't feel my pain. Please don't give me hype, write my name in ice. Can't argue with these lazy basics, I just raise my price. I'm a boss, I'm a leader, I pull up in my two-seater, and my mama was a savage. Got this here from Tina, I'm a savage, yeah. Classy, bougie, ratchet, sassy, moody, nasty, acting stupid, what's happening? What's happening? I'm a savage, yeah. Classy, bougie, ratchet, yeah. Sassy, moody, nasty, hacking stupid, what's happening? What's happening? Like Beyonce, like me. He wanna punch like the stallion with the knees. He be like, how that thing moving in the jeans. I ain't even.
All right, folks. It is a guy with the bow tie checking in with you live for another edition of Business with Benefits. Let me turn the Beyonce off for a second. Trying to do Beyonce every day this week except for one day. But thanks for joining us, folks, for another edition of Business with Benefits. To my right, you will see the wonderful Stacy M. Buchanan. Stacy, can you hear me okay? Oh, wait, you're on mute. Hold on. There you go. There you go. Now you're good. Oh, you muted yourself. Hold on, I'll take you off mute. Hold on.
Okay.
There you go.
Perfect. Yes.
Hey, Stacy, how you doing?
I am doing great. I am doing great. I'm doing great. I'm just laughing at our off-air conversation. I have my daughter with me. I want the audience to know that. So if I seem a little bit frazzled, it's because I have my 1-year-old with me. So.
Yep, and I got my 2-year-old, so I'm with you. I understand, Queen.
Yes.
And that's the current state of affairs. I'm kind of not liking the phrase "the new normal," but the current state of affairs is kids are in our businesses right now, so it's totally fine. So first, I want to say thank you to #TeamLive, #TeamReplay. However you watch, we appreciate it. Let us know in the comments so we can represent for you. And I'm here in the United States. You're there in Canada. So
yes,
we got the Canada connection going right now. So for people that don't know who you are, I've seen your TED Talks and the wonderful things you're doing. But for people that haven't seen that or don't know who you are, let them know who you are and why you know about mental health.
Okay, so my name is Stacy M. Buchanan. I'm an actress, a filmmaker, a TEDx speaker, and a mental health advocate. I'm an advocate because I use my own personal story, my own journey, rather, to advocate for mental health, especially within the Black community. I will apologize for my camera. I will apologize for the lighting. But, yeah, I totally remembered about this about an hour ago, and I have my baby girl with me, so like I said, if I seem a bit frazzled, please understand that I'm minding her at the same time while I'm doing this.
That's honestly, and I love it. And that's the thing with this current situation, because right before we got on, my daughter had to get some food and whatnot, so I had to keep her entertained. So that is the current state of affairs. And I think that's important with the way things are going, to be honest with what's going on in business. So how long are you guys in quarantine right now in your city?
We are, but not. It isn't as strict as it was a few months ago, or more like a few weeks ago. So we're still, You're still recommended to stay home, but you can still go out. I mean, people are still at the park. People are going to the beaches now. So, yeah, the city is kind of like somewhat halfway open.
Yeah, I'm still staying in. So I mean, I'm here in Georgia, and we've had cases increasing, and yeah, people with melanin like you and myself don't do well with this virus here in the U.S. at least. In Georgia, I think it's like 70% of the hospitalized people are people of color. So I'm healthy, but I don't want to take a chance. I kind of look at it like AIDS almost. Like, yeah, I could take a chance, but I don't want to. So
Yeah.
I'm staying in. But
No, same.
right now we have two pandemics kind of going on. You and I talked a little bit about this a couple weeks ago. There is a pandemic of racial inequality. It's not just the U.S. It's kind of worldwide, but racial inequality and the COVID-19 pandemic. So, with your work with mental health, do you see that we have a dire need for talking about mental health right now?
Yeah, and we should always have a dire need for talking about mental health, but especially now because what we're facing and what the Black community is facing, there's a lot of transgenerational trauma. I saw a meme on Instagram and it says, no one sat the freed slaves down and gave them therapy. So what is
Mm,
happening is everything, all of that trauma is being passed down through us. So if you're wondering, if you're in Africa or you're in Jamaica or you're in Canada and you see another Black person being brutally murdered on camera, on TV, on your phone, you're seeing that and you wonder why you're triggered. If people don't understand why you're triggered, this is why we're triggered. It's called transgenerational trauma that we're facing and that we're
mm,
dealing with. So this is really affecting this has been affecting our mental health. This is a huge part of the blockage of our mental health. I mean, the biggest stigma in the Black community is shame, right? Because we're
yeah.
conditioned to be the strong Black man and the strong Black woman. So whatever we should just take it all. We should just take it all and carry it all. And that is the
Yep.
biggest misconception in our community. And I want to dismantle that whole meaning of strength. Strength isn't what we can carry. Strength is what we choose to put down. And we need to put down and we need to on just put this down and say, you know what, we're no longer carrying this baggage anymore and tend to our minds and our mental health.
I like your way of breaking that down. And friend of mine, Daniel Avalos, he's one of the agents on my team. He said June is PTSD Awareness Month. So Daniel, thanks for letting us know that on
Thanks for
Team
letting us
Live.
know that. I honestly didn't know that. So thank you. I know
I don't know if
September
it's
is
a
that awareness month.
worldwide thing. Maybe it's a U.S. thing. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Who knows? But yeah, PTSD Awareness Month. And then Andrea, she put Team Live. Hey, Andrea, thanks for jumping on. I'm not Andrea. Ashina. I need my glasses on right now. So I saw your video when you talked about your Jamaican descent, and you mentioned
Yes.
how in Jamaica, and this is even in African American in our culture, that when somebody has something going on, they'll say pray, sleep on it, go take a walk. Like it's never like decompress it. So you had that same experience kind of in Jamaica, where it was, I think you said drink some tea was kind of the way to deal
Yeah.
with stuff you was told.
Yeah. It's drink some tea, pray about it, and read your Bible.
And that seems to be, I mean, you even see that in movies all the time, or people all the time say, I'm going to go pray on this. And I never want to speak ill of anybody's faith, but to you, that's not really addressing the problem, it sounds like, right?
No, it's kind of like being dismissive of the problem, but you have to also understand that it's generational teachings. So my
Mm,
dad told me that. So it's basically what his parents told him prior and their parents prior to how you deal with mental health. You should pray it away. And I'm a Christian and I'm by no means denouncing my Christianity. But at what point do we say, if we can go to the doctor for a broken leg, for diabetes, for heart problems, for our physical, if our physical is not intact, so why can't we choose to go to a doctor for our mental as well?
yeah, I agree with that 1,000,000% because that's where, faith without action is kind of insanity to me. If you're going to pray all day but never do anything, it's like, well, yes, you have faith, but do something, get some help,
Yes.
talk about this. So we're all cooped up for the most part. We're choosing to be cooped up with COVID-19. So in your professional world, what do you see some things people are having changed most with mental health right now?
Let's talk about myself, for instance. I'll be personal. I'm an extrovert. I'm always
Okay.
out, I'm always working, and I have anxiety. And I think for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, my anxiety fueled a lot of my me being an extrovert and a lot of my ambition. That's what my anxiety fueled. It gets me to get up and do stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
the fact that I was stuck at home and I couldn't do anything, and I had all these big plans, and I had to rearrange everything and try to work around the new norm that I was having.
Mm-hmm.
My anxiety was at a high time. It was very high, and for the first time I didn't know how to address it. So how I addressed it really was I went back to my post on Instagram and Facebook and I started to read my own words to get me through
Yeah.
it. And I've also said too, I sat down with my anxiety and I personalized her. And I was like, listen, the two of us working at this rate is not going to work. I need you to take it down because I think you need me more than I need you. Whatever, we need each other, but we are not going to function if the two of us is up here. So I need you to take that right down.
I love that.
And it's like giving myself a bit of cognitive, behavioral therapy. So.
Well, that's good. 'Cause I think I remember as a male, it's always like, don't cry, just walk it off. And even like talking to yourself almost is frowned upon in most cultures. But you're basically, when you say it that way, like you say, you personalize it. It's not just a rant. It's a personal, hey, I don't have a therapist here right now, but I need to talk this out. So does that help you a lot with other people getting through these kind of things?
If it helps me sharing this advice to other people?
Yeah, as far as like the personalizing, because I've never heard that methodology of personalizing your stress. Is that a very helpful technique for people?
You know what? I think it worked for me, but I've never encouraged anyone to do that. Because, I'm not a therapist, so I've never encouraged anyone to personalize it. But this is the first time I had to personalize it for myself. The very first time. Yeah.
And then Sheena, she put a comment up here. I agree. You have to take action. So you can't just talk about it all day. Actually take some action. And Hope over here on YouTube says, have a nice day. Thanks, Hope, for that. Donovan Smith with the Post Meridians and Team Live. And he actually put a link for your YouTube video for people to watch for your TED Talk.
Yeah, I saw that. Thank you, Donovan. That is so sweet of you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
He did the extra work. I watched it and forgot to even put that on there. But thank you, Donovan. So that's one thing is, as you mentioned, being an extrovert and being all your plans have changed.
Yeah.
Another thing, I think you mentioned you go to school sometimes. So children dealing with this pandemic, do you think they're better equipped for this than adults are right now? Or are you kind of seen as, 50-50 on that?
I think they are a little bit, because think about the parents that have to now homeschool their kids. Mm-hmm. Or they don't know where to find a sitter, and some of them that were essential workers have to go to work. So I think kids kind of were able to manage a lot more easier than adults, to be honest. Yes.
Okay. So your 1-year-old, she's like, I don't even know what's going on right now, but I'm gonna.
Yeah, she's never been in daycare. She's always been. My mom was here with me, and so my mom took very good care of her while I was out working.
Well, I wanted to ask the audience and you a question then. So the current state of mental health with both pandemics. So we opened up with COVID. What do you think is the current state of mental health with the racial disparity going on right now? Let's talk about the Black mental health with that and the white mental health with that. We'll start with the Black side. What do you think is the current state of mental health with everything going on with the killings?
We're in shambles. We are.
Okay.
For the first time in my life, the question for a few weeks, how are you doing, was triggering for me. Because how do I answer that truthfully? I've always said this, that the most told lie in the world is, I am fine. It's the most told lie. And I was battling with, am I okay? Am I fine? Am I great? Or as a mental health advocate, I'm supposed to be so strong. And, people come to me for advice and to come to me for how to cope through. And here I am for the first time struggling. And I started finding, how are you, very triggering, because I want to say, no, I'm not fine. I'm exhausted. And I've been exhausted. And Black people are exhausted emotionally, physically, mentally, because we fight this battle of, do we speak up and be labeled as the angry Black man, the angry Black woman, lose jobs, lose potential clients, or do we take it all? Do we be silent? And when we're being silent, it's a blatant injustice and lynching of our mental health. So we are fighting these two battles, and we don't know where to go. But I've always taken plan A, step A, to talk about it. I'm exhausted. I'm not gonna lie. I'm great, but I'm exhausted. But I will never be too exhausted to continue fighting. As for white people, I think there's a lot of white guilt that's going on right now. Yeah. And a lot of white guilt, and a lot of also weren't aware that this stuff does happen, and that racial injustice is happening, oppression is happening, profiling is happening. A lot of people, and I think I had a conversation with a friend. I think what a lot of white people may be doing right now, maybe personalizing this and thinking, that is my daughter. I'm thinking it's much for them, that it's so much for them to take on, and it's exhausting. And it's like, this is not for you to personalize at all. This is not an attack. It's not for you to personalize. This is for you to understand. And we're not talking about, it's not allyship. It's not about performative allyship. It's about taking actions. There's a huge difference with putting up a Blackout Tuesday sign and a Black Lives Matter post on Instagram and showing things in your stories without doing actions. Okay, so doing something on Instagram or on social media, it means nothing if you don't go out there and call it out. So if you see some injustice going on, if you see racial profiling going on, if you see things that you know that are racist, call it out.
Yep.
You know, that is taking action with us. That is what we need. This is the hold hands around the world, and let's come together and let's realize that this is the problem that has been plaguing us for decades, for centuries. So.
Yeah, I love the way you broke that down, that doing the post only isn't the only thing, because I find myself getting in these battles on LinkedIn recently that people are, jumping on women's posts. Like there's a woman, Madison Butler, the blue-haired recruiter. She'll post these, straight to the point kind of, racism isn't personal, things she'll post, and then, white men will jump all over her and attack her. And I find myself fighting that. Like, I'm not just going to let this be, dead space in the internet, say what you want. But at the same time, I see a lot of this, like you said, social media. I want to say something, sound good, sound nice, but not actually doing something. So with that being said, you mentioned the personalizing it for white people. I feel like that happens on the black side too, where some folks are thinking, well, I didn't go through slavery, so I don't know what the big deal is, or I didn't go through civil rights, I don't know what the big deal is. So there's also, I think, a side to the black side that's kind of disempowered from this and doesn't do anything. So for the people that are trying to wrap their hands around this and actually make cause of change, you mentioned actually, stopping it and fighting it. For the people that are kind of afraid of that, what are some mental health things you think to help them not feel so much white guilt, or to help them understand better what we're going through?
Are we talking about for black folks or for white people? Sorry.
I guess white people, because I see a lot of my white friends, they're kind of like, they feel bad about this, and I understand that. And one of my colleagues mentioned his father was like a descendant of Robert E. Lee or something. So he's like, I feel, my family's part of this war and everything. But, the feeling bad part about it, that's cool that people feel bad. But I hear you saying take more action. So for the people that just feel bad and they don't know how to deal with that, they don't know how to deal with, my family might have had slaves, my family might have been Confederate, all of that. What are some tips or tactics you can let them know to help them cope with this better, to help us ally together for this kind of thing?
I don't think, honestly, Dara, I don't think it's my responsibility or your responsibility to tell white people how to change. It's not, we're not here to teach you about racism. I'm not going to be rude and say there's Google out there, but we're battling so much already. And so we have this battle that we're going through, this battle, and now we're going to take on our battle and then teach you how to handle racism, how to handle us, how to move forward. That is not our job. That should not be our job.
Yep.
That is not our job. That is white guilt right there that you're dealing with. And it's not fair for us to then having to go and deal with it.
Live internet.
We're causing. So that's not our job. And honestly, it's not being rude. It's just, you have to think about how exhausting this is for us. And for us to then go out, and then, so now we have to deal with our own pain and our own struggles, and whether or not we're going to speak out, or are we affected by it? Because we are affected by it. We are. Yep. But then we have to go again, and then we have to sympathize and feel with you and teach you about it. It's just about honestly changing your mindset and looking at it from a different perspective, and seeing little things. Like, for instance, I worked at a job for years, and I was speaking to a friend of mine and said, do you remember the time when the boss always used to say he wants to put you up front in this job, like put you up front more where you can attend to the customers rather than me? Do you understand why that was happening? It's because you were white. Little things like that, but they don't see it because the world is catered around them. So when you're born into this whole catering thing, for you to now wake up and be like, oh my God, I haven't seen this for years. It's going to take some time, and I'm not bashing anyone. I am not. But that is too much of a load for Black people to carry. We cannot teach you about racism and depression and oppression and systematic. We can't teach you all of that while we're dealing with this battle. We can't. That is unfair to us. It's really unfair.
That's the exhausting part. Yeah, as you said that, I thought about
it's so exhausting.
I thought about a Kanye West lyric when he mentioned, but let some Black people walk in. I bet you they show off their token Blackie. So like when he was working at a Gap store, Black people walked in, they would bring him out. Otherwise, he was in the back. And that's a real thing people don't kind of understand. And some comments real quick. Daniel put out there, state of mind for many like myself is to remind people that they are loved, appreciated, admired, and desperately needed. So Daniel's an old Marine. So he's letting you know about PTSD. Definitely is a real thing. So that's something. And I think that Black people are going through PTSD for this, whether you know it or not, with all the killings. I mean, when Rashad Brooks got shot here in Georgia, I was just turning on the TV and then boom, now it's front and center. Black man, father of 3, gets shot in the back with police. And I teared up for that because I have 3 kids. And he was just drunk, and honestly, take it how you want to, but if you're drunk and you get pulled over by the police for something, and he wasn't even driving, but if you get in custody from police and you really didn't do anything, you might panic because you're drunk. You might just freak out and say, "Oh my God, I'm about to die," which is what I think went through his head. He just tried to run away, but that struck a chord with me. So I mean, that's PTSD, just these little micro things that happen over time.
Exactly.
Nobody talks about that. Nobody teaches us as Black people, like, hey, when your cousin got shot, we were supposed to talk about how you felt about that, not just get a T-shirt, not just do the funeral. We're supposed to kind of, air it out. So as a Black female in Canada, the experience is probably a little different from what's going on here, but how is it perceived over there with everything going on in the US right now?
It's still the same pain. It's honestly, it's still the same pain and the same struggle. It's unfortunate when I hear friends that have Black sons, or you talk about like when your partner leaves and they go out, are they gonna come home? At what age do I start teaching my son, my children, about racism and how to deal with the cops and what to say? Of course that is triggering. Of course that is so traumatizing. It's worldwide. People think that racism doesn't happen in Canada. It does. It's just mask with a smile and say nice day, eh? Really and truly, that's all it is. But it does happen. It does. Any Black person can tell you that it does happen 100%, And I don't like it being deemed as like it's dismissed over here. It's the land of milk and honey and happiness and sunshine, rainbows and lollipops. Racism is very prevalent. I have friends that can't get a job, and I'm pretty sure it happens in the States because of your name. Because your name sounds too Black. Where you live, your neighborhood is too Black, so you must be Black from there to not get a job. All of this stuff ties into it. These are all a part of systematic racism that we deal with daily, that the Black community deal with. And when I say the Black community, I don't just mean the United States or just North America. I mean overall, in general, the Black diaspora, every Black.
I actually saw a video recently of a guy in Canada, and he got pulled over, and it was a Black guy driving a nice car, and the white cop said, "Hey, I'm not racist. I just pulled you over because there's a lot of drug dealers in this area, and I don't know your car." And he's like, "Well, if I was white, would you pull me over?" "Probably not, but I would have eventually." It's like, "Well, but that's racist. You just said
Exactly.
I'm not racist, but I'm pulling you over because you're Black with a nice car."
Every time you start a statement with "I'm not racist," but
right. It was interesting though, because it was like people always think, "Oh, that's not a U.S., that's not a Canada thing," but I saw it in an actual video of the guy. Hey, I'm about to record this, and it was like 2016. So this stuff isn't new. And then Chad had a comment, some thumbs up for that there, and then Ashina said there is a lot of miseducation and historical ignorance on both sides. Yes, definitely. And I wish that we talked about these things more often. And guys, throw some reactions of what she's saying is resonating with you, because this is important to have these open dialogues. And I find myself, I'm not fully exhausted yet, so I try to teach people here and there. But at the end, I am like, man, that was just a whole lot to tell somebody that they could have just watched in the video or Googled. But this pandemic isn't really going away, and it's not just in the U.S. So for the people that kind of, one thing I hear often with Black Lives Matter is the Black on Black crime. People always throw out there, well, there's Black on Black crime, so why aren't we worried about that too? Which anybody watching this, if you study that, there's a lot of intra-racial murder all the time. Every race kills their own race. White people kill white people, Hispanic kill, it's just, that's the way it is. So for the people that are kind of in that mindset, that's their defense for like, hey, y'all don't care about yourselves, why should I care? How do you deal with that kind of person when you see that or hear that information from the media or different people out there?
I honestly feel attacked. Every time I hear that, I feel so attacked, because there is white on white crime, there's Asian and Asian crime, there's Indian and Indian crime. Like, there is crime within, like you said, every different race, every different culture. So for when people say that, it's being dismissive of the problem. It's being, you're saying because there's Black and Black crime, then it should be okay for a black unharmed man, innocent man, unharmed, to be murdered in cold blood, to be lynched in cold blood, to be assassinated in cold blood. You're saying that you agree with that and that is okay. That is not okay, because if the tables were turned and if that person was of a different race or a white, they will not get the same treatment. Right?
Yep.
So that right there is so disrespectful and dismissive. You're basically saying that you do not care about the problem. It's just your way of saying you don't care about the problem without you fully saying that you don't care. You're coming
That
up
makes sense, yeah.
with scenarios, or you're coming up with statements to just divert from the whole situation. That is disrespectful, and it's attack. I feel attacked whenever that is said, honestly.
Yeah, I see that a lot in comments where, like, when Rashad Brooks got shot, somebody said, a guy posted, well, don't fight in the streets, fight in the court. So basically, like, oh, it's okay to shoot him because he fought in the streets. Like, well, no, he was shot in the back and they said got him and kicked him when he's on the ground. So, you know, that's traumatic for all of us. So to kind of divert for a quick second, what are some mental health things you've done for yourself to help with self-care? We talked about personalizing the stress and the issue, but what are some other, you know, for people that can't maybe afford to get a therapist or are still uncomfortable with that, what are some practical tips to help them on that journey?
One thing I've learned is I'm off social media. I'm off Instagram and I'm off Facebook. I had to take a break off because I find that I was seeing a lot of things, and I was getting a lot of messages, and I was just pouring from an empty cup, and my cup was just getting drier and drier and drier, and that wasn't fair to me. So I always say that self-care, like block, unfollow, delete, and mute, are forms of self-care. You know, those are forms of self-care. Like if it's bothering you mentally, emotionally, it's anything that is negative, you feel like you're being negatively affected, then you don't need to be on social media. That's one way you can take care of it. Going for walks is so important. I know people say this all the time, but I'm telling you, deep breathing does work. Exercise does work. Being around plants does work. Meditation works. It's so important for you to ground yourself in your home, in your safe space, a place that you consider safe before you go out there in the world. It's so important to follow grounding methods. And one grounding method that I really like is to just do a quick meditation. Or if you get up early in the morning and you can pull through with half an hour meditation, just ground yourself first. And if you're faith-based, whether you're faith-based or not, prayer does work too. You know, I'm not denouncing that, but when you pray, it's kind of like, it's sort of like giving out affirmations. Like, you know, this is not my load to carry right now. Let me just ease this off of me, God. Just take this load from me, and I give this to you. So prayer is it's like you're meditating, but if you don't have the time to meditate, just say a quick prayer. But ground yourself in your safe space first, which is your home. If your home is a safe space, I really hope it is, before you go out. Those are really grounding methods, and deep breaths. And remember, you don't have to read everything. You don't have to watch everything. You don't have to see everything. Someone can keep telling you a story. And if you're triggered about a recent event, if you're triggered, you can tell them to stop. You don't want to hear it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So another thing too, that usually you mentioned the transgenerational issues, that, you know, many generations of many different cultures, this kind of stuff is taboo not to talk about. It's kind of like, you know, go deal with that. That person's crazy. It's kind of how they're, you know, characterized. So when you have that in your family, like your family doesn't believe in therapy, your family doesn't believe in all that kind of stuff, and you're kind of on your own little island with everything. You gave some great tips for that, but as far as them helping their family, is there a way to kind of break the pattern and kind of help make your family understand this is more important?
That is such a tough one, because the family. The reason why I named my documentary "The Blind Stigma" is the blind stigma was named after my dad, who purposely turned a blind eye to my mental illness when I was struggling with suicidal depression and anxiety. And it's also named after your dad, your uncle, your cousin, your sister, your brother, anybody that turns a blind eye to mental health. And I think how we can really navigate through this and to get our families to understand is for you to take the necessary step for you. Do it for you. If you feel like you need professional help, then go seek a therapist. go seek a therapist. And if before you want to seek a therapist, you want to get more information and you have a friend or a colleague or family member that you consider a safe space, because we ourselves as human beings, we are considered safe spaces as well. So whenever someone discloses something to you about what they're struggling with, consider it an honor and a privilege, and to listen without judgment. I can tell it from my personal experience. I don't need advice. I don't need tips. I don't need you to chime in and to say how you think you can help. All I need is for you to listen. So you are a safe space when someone comes to you. So the first step is to find somebody that you can disclose to, and if that person is yourself, you can record it on your phone, record the things to yourself, but take the steps to seek therapy. If your family doesn't believe in it, your family doesn't believe in it, but doesn't mean that you need to die. You need to suffer. You need to struggle because of your family belief. It doesn't. It's
Give
time
some
for us to
reactions
start
for
fighting
that.
for ourselves, right?
Give us
And
some
I
reactions
guarantee
for
you,
that. That was deep.
my dad was so dismissive with my mental illness, and now my dad is one of the biggest advocates out there. Biggest. His mind has done a 180 after seeing my documentary, and he admitted, because my dad is also in the documentary, guys. My dad is in the documentary, and he said he just didn't know how. He didn't know how to help me. That's it. So a lot of
Yeah,
things the older generation may say is because they don't know. And can I tell you that they're one of my favorite groups of people to talk to is the older generation? Especially, I find them very rarely try to challenge me, I find them like looking back and they're like, oh my God, you're right. This happened. Oh, I have a son. Like, how do I deal with this? Like, I love talking to the older generation because their stance on mental illness is so one-sided and so blinded. So when I go in
yeah.
and I try to talk to them, it's like, oh, you're right. Like, so the older generations are one of my favorites to talk to, and teenagers. I mean, teenagers scare me, but I love them because
Well,
they have no filter, right? But like,
in 12 years you'll have a teenager, so you'll be caught up
oh
with that.
my God. She's wrecking everything right now. She's wrecking my jewelry. She has my box open. She's taking out my necklace. But you know what? It's all good. It's all good.
Hey, I gotta tell myself she's 2, because my daughter does the same thing. So if you guys can see in this little studio room I have, it's a hurricane all around me. But I gotta tell myself she's 2, she's 2, she's 2. But you mentioned that the older generation didn't have the tools. I mean, I think COVID-19 is a good example for me. When it first came out, I was like, oh, this is just the flu kills more people than this. Cancer kills more people than this. I was kind of one of those people. And then as the information was presented to me, I'm like, oh, this is actually bad. I did a full 180. I'm wearing the mask. I'm doing gloves when I go to certain places. I'm not going in gatherings. And I did a 180 because the information was given to me. So the elderly people, they didn't have that. They didn't have Google. They didn't have this. They couldn't figure this out. So they just found whatever their parents said. Like, well, grandma and them never talked about this, so it must be the way we're supposed to do it. But
and they also find that they have a lot of baggage that they've been holding on to.
Yep.
A lot of things that they go through, and they're just like, nope, gotta be strong. Gotta be strong.
Yeah, so I think strength, like you said, is what you can, you said what you take off of yourself. Strong black man, a strong black woman is a movie thing you see all the time. It's a T-shirt, it's a saying, but reality is some of the strongest people I know just open up and tell me, and they just are vulnerable. Yeah, and it's hard. It was hard for me. The first time I cried with my father, I was like, man, I've never done that before, and I was a grown man. The first time I cried with my dad, because as a kid, it was like, walk it off, boy, you're fine, military guy. So the first time it happened, he cried. We're like, what the heck is this? Both of us are crying, but it was just one of those things that it is okay to open up people. So if you've had a hard time with mental health, I mean, Stacy's a great advocate for that, and her documentary is amazing to help you see it. And I think for people of color, now's the time for this more than ever, because as I see day by day, new videos come out of people that got shot, things that happened months ago we didn't see about. I'm opening my eyes up too much to that, like you said, kind of shut it off. But I see it so frequently now that it's like, gosh, I know what's happening as a black man. Because I full transparency, when I see a cop behind me, I still tense up, and I've been like that for years. For years, whenever I'll pull into somewhere just to be like, I don't want no trouble. Literally, like I'll be driving somewhere and I say, oh, there's a Wendy's, I'll go there right now, just because I know my tag's up to date, my insurance is up to date, I haven't robbed anybody, I've done nothing wrong. But as a child, I got pulled over when I was 16 for a rabbit hanging from my rearview window. It was probably a 1-inch rabbit. There's no way you could see as a cop driving by me, but he pulled me over and searched the car because of that as a teenager. So to this day, when a cop gets behind me, I'm like, I'm gonna just pull over somewhere and just, wait till he's gone. So with everything going on, I mean, you gave some great tips for that, and I want to make sure our audience catches up to Marcello. Good friend of mine, Marcello, said he's coming from Atlanta. Team Live. Marcello, thanks for jumping in, Marcello. You're shouting out Chad. What are some things that can, like, if people want to get more help from you and learn more about your work, who are the kind of organizations you talk to typically? Is it small businesses, schools? Like, what is your typical speaking audience?
Oh, it's such a mixture. Can I tell you why I go to church often to speak?
Okay.
High schools, public schools, universities, colleges, businesses. I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're probably doing a lot of virtual now then, so you're doing more virtual events than in person lately.
Yes.
And the people are having some good conversation in the comments. So I'm going to be respectful of your time. I know you got the 1-year-old running around tearing everything up. For people that want to learn more about your work in the documentary, where should they go?
You can go to StacyAnnBuchanan.com, or you can go to theblindstigma.com or YouTube. You can YouTube, and I have a page there. You can watch the documentary. You can watch my TED Talk. And you can also see the podcast. So I have a podcast to go along with the Blind Stigma, which I've turned into a franchise. So the podcast is what we did was we created a safe space. So Dr. Natasha Williams, who was the doctor she's the doctor represented in the documentary. We came together and we have this podcast that we host together because we wanted to have the clinical experience and the lived experience. So we interview guests from all over the world. We've interviewed a few of people from the United States. And can I say that I love interviewing Black people from the United States? Not that I don't from Canada, but the experiences, they're so raw and they're so open and they're so honest and they're so vulnerable. There's nothing sugar-coated. There's nothing capped on. It's like telling it like it is. And that is what we needed. And we wanted to make sure that with this podcast, we created a safe space for us to tell our stories without it being watered down or without it being brushed aside or mixed or remixed or anything like that. This is our truth that is being seen. The safe space is not just for us as the host, it's for our guests, and it's also for our audience. And I always tell my audience, make sure you ground yourself. You do deep breathing exercises and ground yourself before you listen, because some of the stories can trigger you because you've gone through something similar. But it's also more important there for you to empower you, to let you know that you're not alone, because too many of us think that we are alone in this or we're the only one that experienced this, and it's letting you know that you're not. Also, what I have coming up next is part of the franchise of the Blind Stigma is coming out with a book. So it's a book where it's kind of like something for chicken soup for the soul, where we're going to be hearing stories from the Black community on their journey with mental illness. And if anybody wants to be a part of this book, feel free to reach me out on my website. You can go to StacyBuchanan.com, and there's a link to email me. I haven't announced it yet anywhere because, like I said, I took a break. But you can also send in your story anonymously too, because I do understand that the stigma and veil of shame is still worn in our community. But I know your story and your journey isn't just for you, okay? It's your story, your journey can empower someone else, can help save their lives.
It's like we got a business of benefits exclusive for the Stacy Ann Buchanan release, already exclusive here. So thank you for that. As you said, the triggering part to this, a quick thing to end out with. There's a Civil Rights Museum here in Georgia where there's a portion of the museum where you sit down and you close your eyes and they put on headphones for you, and you hear people like I think they were on a bus or something. No, they were running from racist people trying to kill them. So your eyes are closed and you're just hearing like recording of them saying, "We're gonna get you, boy," and they're just chasing you down. And I think my it was either my wife's mother or my mother cried about that, because I mean it triggered like, man, this is like the real thing. Like it just triggered like I'm there. And then a lot of people, they say, don't sit here if you get emotional. Like don't do this part if you get triggered easily. And that was something that didn't exactly happen to them, but just hearing it was like, this is what my ancestors went through. This is what my grandmother went through. So you're right about the triggering piece. And a couple comments for the end. Marcello said he wants to see your baby. Let's see her.
Friends. So her name is Fran. She was named after Frantz Fanon. I hope the audience is She's like pushing away my hand. If you, anyone is familiar with Friends Fanon's work, friend, do you want to say hi? Do you want to say hi? Come say hi. Say
Aww.
hi.
Let me turn the banner off so I don't hide her face. There we go.
And she's waving. Say hi.
Hi. Oh, she can't see me backstage. Hi. Hi. Thanks, Cello, for bringing the family moment in here.
Okay, say mwah.
And Donovan said, "Keep on giving the world your gift."
Mimi. Yes, it's mommy. Yeah.
And Marcello said, "I'm getting goosebumps." I think he's talking about the story, not your baby. Maybe your daughter gave him goosebumps. I don't know. But that people just talk about these things. This whole everything with the pandemic. I love that you said the worst whole lie is I'm fine. Because I almost in sales, I tell people that's this when you call people for sales saying, "How are you doing today?" Nobody genuinely answers that when you say, "How are you doing today?" Because if they did, you wouldn't probably want to talk any further. Because they would tell you like, "I've been watching my kids for the past few days while I'm working." So if you say, "How am I doing?" If I say fine, I'm not. It's been difficult. And I'm letting people in the show know that. But when you call people in sales and say that, it's like, just stop asking that question. Actually ask a real question that you're going to get an answer to, because everybody lies about that all the time. So people talk to each other. If the pandemic's been hard for you, talk about it. If everything happening with Black Lives Matter is hard, talk about it. Just get it out. Because, if you keep it in, it's going to be bad.
It doesn't serve you. It's an injustice to yourself.
Yep. And he put all to your daughter, and then Ashina said cute. So you got a little celebrity already.
She's playing with my shoes and everything like that now. She's all in the closet. I'm so embarrassed and sorry that the closet kept on opening, but this is my first interview having her, not having like somebody watching her while I have it. So we're making history.
You're okay.
Yeah.
There we go, making history. Well, Stacy Ann, thank you for jumping on here. Business of Benefits, folks. Check our webpage out. Pay attention for when the book comes out, and the podcast. I'll put some links to the podcast in the comments for you. And just talk, people. Let's get through these pandemics together.
Yes.
We will catch you next time. Y'all know that you get your baby. Thanks for joining us on Business of Benefits.